Have you ever wondered who you might have been in a past life? If you've experienced that uncanny sensation suggesting that this isn't your maiden journey on Earth, come along with us to gauge the likelihood of your past experience. Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff and Joe the Scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn and...
I'm Joe.
Now, we've talked about reincarnation before, but mostly in the context of very young kids' memories, right? Today, we're going to look at our own adult memories and see if there might be an argument for reincarnation. In the what's the word I'm looking for? In the spirit of investigation, I made the huge sacrifice to do probably 50 different online quizzes about reincarnation.
Oh, okay.
And so I took the best of the best, but this one is the best one overall that we're going to go over. Obviously, we're not doing the quiz. We're just going to talk about the questions because at the end of the quiz, it didn't really give you any definitive answer.
Yeah.
But
the better quizzes like that don't.
No.
It's like gambling.
Yeah,
you know?
Right. So out of all those quizzes, they all of them claim to prove or disprove or even identify your past lives. One said you can find out who you were, what famous person you were in a past life. And so you put in your date of birth and it finds a person who died on that date.
Okay.
And then and so it shows their birth date and death date. And then the person before that is the person who died on that person's birth date, and so on and so forth.
That's actually kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
I mean, it makes no sense.
But when I did
two people who die at the...
it's just as pointless. But one of the things that it did, the way it did it for me was that they were all like warmongering soldiers. They were all men. So maybe part of that is because statistics or the vital statistics for women weren't really readily available in previous eons. So whatever. It was just stupid. It also said there was one that the dates weren't exactly the same. It was like the person died the day before the birth date. And they said, you spent 2 days gathering honey as a bee.
In the meantime.
Yeah. Okay, so they're really kind of silly. But maybe the questions they pose will get you thinking.
Spark something.
Yeah. I'm going to put the links to these quizzes, not all of them because there were far too many, but some of the quizzes the links will be in the description. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe right now so you don't miss another episode. And now on to the questions. The questions I'm asking today are from a quiz on a website called lovetoknow.com. It has lots of different interesting things, and I could see some potential for future episodes about weird things because that's some strange stuff. The results are actually the numbers of people who answered one way or the other. So beneath when you click yes or no on something, beneath that it will say this percentage of people answered yes, and this percentage of people answered no. That's not a scientific inquiry. That is merely a thing of the system counting how many people have answered this quiz. In effect, voting for a yes answer or a no answer. So if you think of it more like a vote, you'll understand that those statistics, those numbers are meaningless.
Yeah.
The people who take the quiz already either are doing their due diligence like I was, or they already have an idea in their mind of what the answer is going to be. And so it's skewed.
I think frequently on those kinds of things, people do it too multiple times.
Yeah.
Specifically trying different things to get different answers.
And the numbers didn't always add up to 100, which made me think that some people just clicked through them. So that, it's pointless. It doesn't have any real relationship to the population at large. First question. Do you have vivid and repeated dreams where you're actually like another person? You're embodied as another person experiencing events in a life you've never lived, in an unfamiliar life.
Like explicitly? Because Because I think there's something to be said about the difference between you're in an unfamiliar setting, you're unfamiliar what's going on, or maybe you don't remember who you are, and you know those things, but they're not who you are typically.
I don't know. That's the question, so I don't know. But this is the way I interpreted it. I frequently have dreams about people I don't know, and events I've never experienced that are more like watching a movie than they are like experiencing it. If in that dream my vantage point was actually another character in that movie, then I would think that would fit. Like if you had a dream that you were a cowboy riding a horse across the range and you're watching a discussion amongst other cowboys about how best to kill the buffalo. That clearly you've never experienced that. You're not a cowboy. You've never experienced being a cowboy on the open range. You've never tried to kill a buffalo, nor do you want to. And you've never hung out with a bunch of cowboys. And so that would be very unusual. That would be, not who you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about your dreams, at least for me, other than the dreams I have where it's like a movie, I'm pretty much me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Makes sense. You'd mostly
else.
be you.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, a dream could be anything,
Yeah.
And so it's definitely not surprising if you are imagining. I mean, it's essentially you imagining.
Yeah.
Super powered imagination. You're imagining you're someone else.
Or
you're imagining a scenario and you have not resolved who you are. Big difference.
Okay. I think that it would be more like if you had a dream and in your dream you were Cleopatra.
You were specifically that person.
Or you were, you're a man and you are a man, but you had a dream that you were a housewife living on a prairie.
Uh-huh.
That would be very different.
Yeah. But if you dreamed you're a housewife on the prairie and you had just watched a movie about housewives on the prairie.
Okay, so I've watched lots of movies. Have I ever had a dream that I was, I don't know, a spy in New York robbing museums?
Consider
No.
this. Imagine you're having a dream and you dream you're somebody living in a futuristic spaceship. Could that be a past life?
Well, if time is just a construct of...
Yeah, so you have to then stretch it further and further.
Okay, so to this question, 46% of the respondents said yes, 53% said no. Almost half and half. Second question. Do you naturally have knowledge about a particular topic that you've never studied before? For example, speaking a foreign language that you've never been exposed to, or being able to recite facts about an historical event that you couldn't possibly have knowledge of.
So obviously, if you dream of something, you have some knowledge, wake up, remember it, the knowledge, then you look it up and it's true. Either you were exposed to it before or you're getting that knowledge some other way. So if you already had it because you lived that life or whatever, or you're clairvoyantly adopting it from the void or whatever while you're sleeping, that's a big one. Like if you are imagining you were somebody living in a different country and you're on you're at some place and then you look it up and it's the same as your dream, that's pretty damning.
Yeah.
That was a real significant.
Right.
And I don't know if that happens to people.
I don't know. It hasn't happened to me. I don't know a foreign language. Now, some of the other quizzes I took asked specifically if learning a foreign language comes easily to you.
Interesting.
So
presumably, if you're able to have knowledge, even memories are a form of knowledge about a past life. Presumably, if you can have knowledge like fact knowledge, you can also have skill knowledge. So skills like knowing a language. And it would be the same, like a certain proportion of all of it would transition over to, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that would be a big one. Like, you're speaking in Spanish and you don't know Spanish.
It would be
supposed to
really,
not
really
know
hard
Spanish.
to live in this modern society and not
never
have been
having exposed to Spanish.
to
Yeah.
Spanish or Japanese.
But
or
if you were like watching a TV show and it's like, wow, yeah, you completely understand them. That's way different.
or you might be having a psychotic break.
Or you might, yeah, you maybe go to the
Okay, so the
psychiatrist.
closest I can say that I've ever come to this is when I lived for several months in a cabin on a mountain far out in the middle of nowhere in Montana, and it had no running water or electricity. And from the very moment I moved in there, I knew just how to do things. It didn't seem weird. It seemed really normal. And in fact, at the time, I can remember thinking, this must be meant to be because it seems so normal and natural to me. It didn't bother me at all. It did. I just knew how things should work, and innovated some things to make it easier. You know, it was very simple. But other than that, I can't really think of anything. Like I've been in have I been in a wagon that was driven by a horse? I don't think I ever have, but that seems really familiar to me. I don't know. Maybe I was a pioneer.
Yeah. Well, so I essentially always have completely crazy, just off the wall dreams. And none of it has any coherent, like makes any sense with respect to reality. Like, for instance, I frequently dream about the AT, the Appalachian Trail. Typically start in California on the AT and go to the East Coast. That doesn't make any sense. So to me, like if I had a dream, I have to, if I knew I was having a dream and that dream was somehow prophetic or clairvoyant or whatever, I would have to think of it as symbolic, because it's definitely not, my dreams do not correspond to any normal reality. So if I did have a past life and it folded over into a dream, it would be like, the name I think of myself in the dream, it wasn't the actual name of my past life.
Well, maybe that dream I had the other night where someone was calling me Mel. Maybe my name was Mel in a past life.
Well, okay, so imagine this. Somebody at that very time, while you were dreaming, that was the scenario, you were looking through their eyes telepathically. If you believe in both, telepathy like that.
Have I not proven telepathy to you yet?
So how can you distinguish them?
I don't know how you can distinguish them, but...
I mean, obviously, if it's like, oh, you're on a horse and you're wearing a pioneer dress and like...
Yes, but if time has no meaning, then you could be receiving messages clairvoyantly from someone who has been dead for 100 years.
How about this? You go back 100,000 years and you're now living as your past life, which was a pre-human ape-like, pre-human hominid. Does that work? Or how about a squirrel? Can you be a squirrel? The thing said, can you be a bumblebee?
Honeybee, yeah.
Well, at what point do you draw the line? Most creatures on Earth are not humans. Most organisms are like roundworms, like bacteria. Now you could say, oh, well, you can't fit your consciousness in that or something. Well, how about an elephant? There have been lots of elephants or whales or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. You're saying,
or
this
rocks.
is all bullshit.
Like if you're saying, okay, you can be a creature like a squirrel, maybe the panpsychism is true and you could be a rock.
Okay, so just for the sake of this episode, can you just not make fun of me?
Okay, go ahead.
46% of the people who answered that question about having natural knowledge about a particular subject said they did. 54% said they did not.
So I wonder what the correlation between the first and the second answers were. Presumably they are correlated.
They're exactly the same answer. 46% yes.
Presumably there's a high correlation.
Except this one is 54% no, and the one before was 53% no.
So interestingly, if there's such a correlation, you're getting less information for each subsequent answer. So if for instance, if everyone answers all the questions, regardless what they are, the same answer, each one gives you no additional information.
Right.
The best case is like with the game 20 questions, where basically every answer is different. It's completely tailored to the question. It's actually giving you information about the question.
Right. Question number 3. Have you ever visited a new location yet felt like you'd been there before? It could be that you know where the landmarks are before you get to that point, or you're able to describe the inside of a building or something before you enter. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it's happened where I had the feeling I've been a place before. Typically, it is a place that looks very familiar. I mean, like I can name a place I'd actually been that it looks just like, Like, for instance, frequently, so there's in southern Wisconsin, there's these very characteristic hills, which is like the driftless region or whatever. And all over the place in the Midwest, there are places like that. And every once in a while when we go through like a valley like that, just think, oh, this looks like southern Wisconsin. And it can be uncanny. Like, wow, this it's just like I've been here before.
Out of all the places I've been, I would have thought that I would have had that sense about certain places I was at in Europe, and I did not. I could appreciate.
So it felt new?
Felt absolutely new.
Interesting.
It was.
Did it have a feel, like a different vibe, a different feeling?
Well, yeah, because I think that your vibe or the feeling you get from something relies a lot on what your headspace is at the moment. And
I think my kind of own theory is your vibe is the accumulation of all of what's going on, and especially your headspace. So like if you had a bad experience in a place, the vibe for similar places later on would be similar. Would be bad, I mean.
Yeah. There's a word that I'm trying to find, and I can't find it. And it's, I thought it was a German word, and it means being homesick for a place you've never been.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of, I don't know what it is, but
this says Fernweh, and it comes from fern meaning far, and weh defined as pain, misery, or woe. So it would mean far sickness or a longing for far off places, especially those you've not visited. There's another...
yeah, I have that.
Yeah, yeah. But
especially at different times.
But it's not the thing I'm thinking of. There's another word that encompasses the relationship with that place.
And you're trying to express that you have that.
Okay, here's one. Hiraeth. It can be defined as the feeling of...
What is this? What language? Klingon?
I don't know. It can be defined as the feeling of longing for a home that no longer exists or never was. It is more than nostalgia. It's an earnest longing or desire. It's a deep and irrational bond felt with a time, era, place, or person you don't know. And I think that when we talk about, have you ever visited a new location and felt like you've been there before, that's what I imagine that you would experience. It's like you'd go, oh...
Or like,
this is home.
That is a good point. Not just like, oh, you have a passing familiarity. Right. It's like
a little deja vu, but like,
this is incredible.
Oh,
it just never goes. Like if you walked in your house, your own actual house, doesn't feel that weird because it's totally familiar. Mm-hmm. But if you walked into a different house and it felt like that, it would be a really different experience.
It would very much be.
It'd be pretty weird.
Now, I had an experience when I was a kid, and it's still as clear today as it was then. I was probably 12 years old, maybe only 11, and my mom used to take us out into the desert for outings. So she'd drive the old station wagon, bomb out on dirt roads, and on this particular time, we went south on the highway towards Needles, and we turned to go towards, I can't remember the name of that weird town where it was... When California legalized pot, then you could go there and buy pot. I know what you're talking about. It was the closest place to.
Can't remember what it's called.
In Nevada. Okay, so along that road, I can't think of the name of that road. There was off in the distance, she could see a little shack, and she drove up this road, and we ended up at this shack. And I got out of the car, and I can remember being stunned, like dumbstruck, of how familiar it seemed. And I remember walking inside and standing in the doorway and looking around, and it was kind of like. If you've ever had a dream about your home and you're familiar with your home, but it's like mirrored, so it's reversed. It was kind of like that in that this I was very familiar with it, but there were things missing, or there was, something was off kilter, but it was very, very strong. And we spent a while there. I suppose everybody else went and hiked around, and I just sat next to that place because it was just so odd, such an odd feeling. And I was a little kid. So that's the closest thing I can say about it. Certainly I've been to places where I look at them and I think, this is beautiful. This feels like it could be home. Usually I say out loud, this feels like home. But what I mean is, this feels like it could be home, because you see that the things that make your heart sing are there. Mm-hmm. But it's not the same as saying, oh my God, I know this place. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's what I took out of that question.
Mm-hmm. I think I should say deja vu is a real thing. I had deja vu the other day, and if it usually goes away immediately, mm-hmm. but if it persisted, you might feel like, and that is just like something going with your brain, or presumably there could be a paranormal explanation, but it's just like one weird thing that your brain does, fault,
So interestingly, considering what the previous percentages of people that answered yes and no, on this one, 68% of the people said yes and 31% of the people said no. So 68% said they'd visited a new location and felt like they'd been there before. Now, is that, as you said, deja vu? Or is that some deep fernoir or whatever it was of, oh my gosh, I recognize this as home, or, someplace. Question number 4. Have you ever met someone with whom you had an instantaneous rapport? For example, you know exactly what this person likes and dislikes before they even say anything, as if you'd known them for a while. Mm-mm. That has happened to me so many times. And unfortunately, I don't do this deliberately, but unfortunately what happens is, in honoring that connection that I feel, I say things to demonstrate to them that I understand who they are, what they are, mm-hmm. or I reflect back things I feel like I know about them. And to them, it seems extremely paranormal.
What?
Okay, so here's one example. There was a couple came in when Kay and I had our office on Desert Inn Boulevard. And they came in, and they're whatever they're talking about, they're fairly new to Nevada. He got a job at a newspaper as a photographer. I'm not going to say the name of the newspaper. She was educated, but was not working at that time. They had a toddler. She's pregnant again. Have a conversation at some point, and I had this real feeling of affinity with mainly him, not so much her. And at some point, he said something about Iowa, and I said, my family's from French Creek. Now, French Creek is a crossroads with a cemetery. There might be a general store there. There's nothing there. It is nothing. It's in the middle of nowhere. And he was from French Creek, Iowa. And I guess it's kind of like cold reading, but I wasn't doing it deliberately. Uh-huh. So then, knowing that he was from French Creek, Iowa, I said some things about French Creek, like, oh, the road that goes down to the cemetery? And then it turned into this whole thing. And we made this connection that way. I didn't know him. I'm not related to him. I actually looked into it thinking, oh my God, maybe I'm related to him. I'm not related to him. The family that came from there was in the 1800s, and they moved away in the 1800s. So it's just presumably very unlikely. Very unlikely. But it was just kind of an odd thing, just kind of odd.
But so I suppose that, okay, for it to be related to like reincarnation,
you would say that, oh, so maybe there was some previous lifetime where I knew that person.
Consider this, generational memory.
Yeah, I have thought about that.
The paranormal version. Mm-hmm. There's another paranormal, like a parallel explanation.
Yeah.
And
at the time, I did not think of reincarnation. I thought probably more along the lines of generational memory, although
of course, kind of interesting, because it'd be like because if his ancestors, your ancestors came from a common point in space, you and him now don't really have anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But if his ancestors lived in French Creek and my ancestors lived in French Creek, maybe not even at the same time, my understanding of French Creek and his understanding of French Creek, we could be talking about French Creek.
How would you know that he came from French Creek?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. But in other cases, there have certainly been times that I've been talking to somebody and felt that I knew something about them, and later it turned out to be absolutely true. Something about their history or their circumstances in their life. And I have to say that I don't necessarily think that's a reincarnation issue, like you knew them in a past life. I think it's more likely that you're picking up on those micro expressions and body language.
Also, keep in mind, I think, what is it? It's called like the law of large numbers or whatever. Rare events, like really super rare events, are happening all the time. And because so many events happen in that you experience all the time, you're basically guaranteed relatively frequently to see very, very rare events. And if you then recognize that they are rare, that because they're rare, they'll stick in your head better. So it will feel like you're seeing a lot more rare events than you should be seeing. Right. It's just that you don't pay attention to all the tremendously huge number of events you experience.
It's like the white car thing. You buy a white car, there's white cars everywhere.
Exactly.
So interestingly, 65% of the people who answered this quiz said that they too met people that they had instantaneous rapport with.
You know what's interesting about the questions is the people who would go to that quiz are already biased one way or another.
Right. So question number 5. Do you have any deep-seated yet unexplainable fears that don't seem to have any root in your present life? For example, you have an abiding fear of the water, even though you've never had an unpleasant incident.
I hate the ocean.
I hate the ocean too. I absolutely... it's terrifying.
It's really easy to be terrified of.
But there are lots of people who love it.
A 2-mile deep body of completely black water.
Yes, but there are lots of people who think it's absolutely wonderful. To me, it's like standing on top of a giant building and there are flesh-eating birds flying around.
So consider this. You have an unnatural fear of viruses. You have an unnatural fear of Germans. You have an unnatural fear of...
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
You know what I mean? Like, in the past, most people died from...
viruses.
So,
actually bacteria, but yeah.
Like, you would be afraid of those things.
Okay,
right?
So I think that maybe what they're getting at is, like, you're terrified of knives, and it turns out you were stabbed in a previous lifetime. Or you're terrified of...
guns, and you'd been killed as a soldier. Like, that makes sense.
Okay, I feel like I have a healthy respect for firearms. I don't feel like I have an irrational fear of them. I don't want them around me, however. And I have had a family member die from suicide, shooting themselves in the head. So I guess the whole irrational or unexplainable, they didn't say irrational, they said unexplainable fear. I can't really think of anything. Other than the ocean. But that makes sense to me. That is
that's not irrational. That's
perfectly
not
explainable.
It would be less explainable if somebody didn't feel that way, to me.
Yeah. Okay, 80% of the people who answered the quiz said yes, they had deep-seated unexplainable fears that didn't have any root in their present life.
You know, one thing with all surveys, quizzes, etc., is if there's a clear, like, positive versus negative answer, you know, so like if the people can predict the outcome of the whole quiz based on each individual question they're answering, they can tailor the outcome of the quiz.
Yes.
So there's like the more advanced techniques for giving out surveys, quizzes, stuff like that includes things that, well, so like for instance, here's a very simple tactic. You just randomize the order of the
And also
questions that are
flip-flop
asked.
them so that sometimes you're asking in one way and, and the next time you offer that question, you ask it in the other way.
Yeah. And if you don't do those sorts of things, you may not even realize how you're answering the questions, that you are actually biased and you're trying to produce a particular outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, number 6, last question. Does a particular smell or sound trigger images in your mind that might feel more like memories, even though they have no basis in your current life?
I think so, but I think I just can't remember my exposure to those smells and stuff.
This is what I think.
Life.
I think, and I just have thought this for decades. I think that when you smell the turkey cooking on Thanksgiving morning, you're not remembering a specific Thanksgiving morning. You're remembering every single Thanksgiving morning. It's been cataloged under the little index card that says Thanksgiving morning. And so you could say, I don't have a clear memory of this particular thing, but the slight hint of the smell of honeysuckle on the breeze is reminding you of something that you just don't remember that exact moment.
That's also very important, a very important idea, because every time, or all the time, but every time you're accessing memories, every time you're exposed to similar situations as a memory, the memory is also changing.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and so it's almost like it's not really even a memory anymore. Mm-hmm. It's an active record of, like you said, every time you've been exposed to something similar.
So I think I have had this happen to me, though, in the way that I believe they're asking this question, mainly in that walking into a house, and I've walked into thousands of people's homes over the years, and feeling a very clear sense of recognition of what is there and how things work in their household, or knowing which cupboard holds the bowl.
So imagine, though, like if you've had it with multiple houses, then if it was a past life thing, it was either multiple past lives, or
I think it's more psychic,
or it's a different phenomenon altogether.
Yeah, I think it's more psychic. So smells and sounds, that is a really difficult one, because for one thing, smell is supposed to be, your ability to smell something is supposed to affect you probably more than any of your other senses. I don't know. I just don't know that that's a compelling argument, because how could you possibly say, I've never, ever been exposed to this particular exact sound before, this particular exact scent before?
And just like we were talking about, if your memories are changing, you might just not remember it, or something else made it seem like you don't remember it, or it makes you so you don't remember it correctly, in the sense that you can't remember that you remember it.
70% of the people who took the quiz said that yes, in fact, they have experienced that. Now, having gone through the entire quiz, you would think at the end it would tell me something important about my answers. It did not. It said, now that you've taken the quiz, you should reflect on your answers and think about them. And that was it.
That was it.
There was no answer. It was, in essence, a voting thing.
It's just like 99% of it is not the end. It's just you going through the thing like a game.
Yep.
And they don't care.
No, they don't care.
Was there multiple screens with that?
Yeah, multiple. Yeah.
So typically they probably have ads.
I don't know if there were
screen.
or not. I was on my computer. I wasn't on my phone. On my phone, it's disruptive because the ads take over the whole screen.
So every time you load a new question, new ads appear. That's why they do that.
I didn't notice if they did or not. So having said all of this and sounding very much like I don't believe in reincarnation, I don't either believe it or don't believe it. I think that maybe there's something to it, but I don't really believe or disbelieve it. If you think you've had a previous life, would you send us a message and tell us about it? Our contact information is in the description. Be sure and start off with reincarnation in the subject line or in the beginning of your message so that we know what it's about. Our contact information is in the show notes. You can email us, text us, or even call and leave a 3-minute voicemail. And as always, if you have a story you want to tell, send it to us. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.
You can't be reincarnated.